Hello, my name is Callum, also known as Wanderloots, and welcome to this tutorial on how to add analytics to your website for free using an alternative to Google Analytics. This is called Web Analytics, and effectively what that means is that for my website, you can see here my digital garden at wanderloots.xyz. I want to track how many views each of my pages get so that I have some data on what people like about my digital garden, what they keep coming back to, just so that I can get some insight to understand what people are most interested in. And that gives me some ideas on what to make more tutorial videos on. And it also helps open up conversations so that I can talk to people about what they seem most interested in. I built this website for free using Netlify and the Obsidian plugin, the Digital Garden plugin, which effectively allows me to publish my notes to this website without any cost. I did also add a custom domain, so that was a small fee, but for the rest of it, it's been free so far. So rather than using a paid service, I wanted to introduce some analytics to my website without overcomplicating things. Google Analytics is probably one that you've heard the most about, but as you can see here, there are entire courses on how you can use Google Analytics. It's very complicated software, and even though it's not that difficult to get started with, it's probably overkill for what I'm looking for on my digital garden, where I'm not trying to convert people into paying customers. I'm just trying to figure out which pages people are going to the most. So if you're interested in setting up advertising, then Google Analytics is a much better option. But there is a catch. Google Analytics requires you to have a privacy policy. So you have to disclose to the users how you're using Google Analytics and what you're doing with their data. This is also why you see cookies on so many sites. So I would have to set up cookies. And I must do this in order for it to be what's called GDPR compliant in the EU. GDPR stands for General Data Protection Regulation. This is an area where the European Union is a lot more strict on privacy than we have in North America, where I'm from, in Canada. So for myself, with my digital garden, I don't really need all that complexity. I don't want to be tracking user data that I have to disclose to them with a privacy policy and through cookies. I just want something a little simpler, something that gives me easy access to the data that I'm looking for. Something like this, where I can see how many views each page gets on my website without getting into too much depth on where the user is coming from and tracking that user over time. So, for what I'm looking for with my digital garden, I don't really think I need that level of complexity. I don't want to be collecting user data to the point that I have to disclose to them that I'm taking their data and storing it. I don't want to have a privacy policy. I don't need to get into that level of depth. I don't want to set up cookies. It's just a lot more than what I need for this website. And honestly, for most people, it's a lot more than they would need. When you get into adding advertising to your website, if that's the route you want to go, then I recommend looking more into Google Analytics. But for now, let's take a look at some simpler solutions. So, most people tend to set up their digital gardens or their websites for free using something like Netlify, which is the website that I use, or Vercel, which is another common hosting platform. Now, both Netlify and Vercel each have their own web analytics platform that automatically can be toggled in the hosting platform. However, Netlify's cost money, and since that's the platform I'm using, I don't want to pay for that at the moment. I would rather find a free solution. Now, if you have Vercel and you're using Vercel for your website, all you pretty much have to do is just toggle on your web analytics and you're good to go. However, this only works for the first 2,500 events. Now, an event means something that causes a trigger to change in your web analytics, which would be, for example, a page view. So if you're expecting to get more than 2,500 views per month, you probably need to set something up or be prepared to pay on Vercel. You could use Google Analytics again, but then you would need to set up privacy policies and cookies, or you can custom code the solution that I'm going to show you in a moment into your Vercel platform. Since I'm interested in tracking simple page views and don't want to pay for Netlify Analytics, I'm going to show you how to connect what's called Goat Counter for free. Goat Counter is really easy web analytics and it doesn't track your personal data. So the goal of this is to provide an open source web analytics platform that doesn't require you to disclose a privacy policy and cookies. This makes it inherently GDPR compliant. And what's also really nice about Goat Counter is that it's really lightweight and fast. It only adds 3.5 kilobytes of extra data to your site. So this means that you can introduce tracking without slowing down your website. And that's a really important element of my digital garden because I'm trying to keep it light and frictionless for me to go and explore different pages on there. And as we'll see in a moment, it's really easy to integrate as well because we only need to add a single script tag. So that's what I'll show you how to do in a moment with Netlify. And what's nice about the open source element of Goat Counter is that it's currently offered for free for reasonable public usage, which means, as described by the creator, running your own personal website or small to medium business on it is fine, but sending millions of page views per day isn't. So you can also self host Goat Counter, but that's a little more work. Again, since I'm just starting out my digital garden and I don't expect to get hundreds of thousands of views at the moment, I think that this is going to be a great starter solution so that I don't have to pay for web analytics and I can get going with my data collection so I can understand what's working best on my website. This process is going to have a couple steps, but it's pretty easy. First, I need to sign up for Goat Counter. Then I need to connect via Snippet injection on my Netlify web hosting platform, which is also very easy. And that's it. That's all I need to do. So let's get started. Okay, so we can see when you sign up for Goat Counter, the first thing I have to do is input my code. So this I'm going to use as Wanderloots because that's the name of my website. The domain I'm using this for is wanderloots.xyz. And then I just have to prove that I am human. And that's it, I can sign up. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is verify my email. So I'm just going to do that for a moment. And there we go. I have verified my email address. So what's nice about Goat Counter is that it tells you how you can get started right off the bat. All I have to do is include this JavaScript into my static website, into my wanderloots.xyz. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And now if I go to Netlify, Netlify is the hosting provider that I'm using to build my digital garden. This connects directly to my Obsidian using the digital garden plugin. So it takes my Obsidian notes and publishes them to my website. So this is my Netlify homepage now that I've signed in to Netlify. And we can see that if I go to my website, wanderloots.xyz, and I go over to metrics, there's an option for site analytics. If I click on this, this costs $9 a month. So if you're interested in a simple solution that involves absolutely no code whatsoever, you can just enable analytics for $9 a month and you'll be able to run that through Netlify. Netlify also offers privacy sensitive analytics, which means that you don't have to worry about the privacy policy in order to be GDPR compliant. So that's one perk. But personally, for a hobby website that I've just started with my digital garden, I don't really want to pay $9 a month. So let's go set up a free version. So I'm going to go over to site configuration and post processing. And this is where I can inject analytics or other scripts into the HTML of my site. And if you're interested in reading more about how this works, you can click on the snippet injection button. And basically all we're doing here is we're going to take that code that we copied from the Goat Counter website, and we're going to put it in either the head or at the end of the body tag. So you could do this in Vercel as well if you wanted to. You would just have to go find the head and the body tag in your HTML page, and you'd be able to copy the tracker link in there from Goat Counter, and you would be good to go. But what's nice about Netlify is they have just a snippet injection. So I can click this here. I'm going to call this Goat Counter Analytics, paste the script in, which already has my wanderloots.goatcounter.com. So that's bringing in my specific code, and click save. There we go. That's it. That's all that had to be done. Now you can see that it has automatically injected that snippet before the body. And now I'm already calculating analytics. So if I go back to my Goat Counter, my next step is to check to see if my ad blocker is blocking Goat Counter, because right now I don't see any page views. So I'm going to go to the Goat Counter website and make sure that my settings are off. Now I'll go back and refresh. Okay, so now that I have connected my website to Goat Counter with the script that I injected, I'm going to go back and let's click through a couple pages. Here's a digital garden, how the system works, my newsletter page, back to home, my YouTube channel. Okay, so now that we've clicked around a bit, let's see what happens. There we go. So if I click refresh, you can see that it's clicked through several different web pages. So each of these web pages just picked up a count of one view. So that's awesome. That's pretty quick. And this is how you can go through and you can track what websites people are clicking on. So over time, as people click through different pages, I'll be able to gather data on which pages people find the most interesting. Now, there's a couple other settings that I might want to get set up. So let's take a look here. What you might have noticed is that already my website is picking up data from me clicking around on it. So if I want to ignore my own IP address, then I can include it here in this settings section on site settings, and that will not track me clicking around on my own website. So this just helps me understand a lot better what other people are looking at rather than what I am looking at. So I can just click this button and it will automatically input my own IP. And from this point forward, it won't track this particular IP address. Okay, with a couple other settings. Now I'm going to take a look up here, start at the top. And if I want to, I can embed Goat Counter. So what does that mean? means that I can embed goat counter in a frame. So I can grab an iframe and I can put this somewhere on my website and I can start keeping track of all of the different website clicks that I'm getting so that I could display that for people. Now, I don't necessarily want to put that out there, so I'm not going to embed that at the moment, but that might be something that you're interested in. So I'm going to add that here. Now I can embed that if I want to. And if I wanted to, I can also add visitor counts to my website so I can track how many people have been to the website. Again, I'm not going to make that public at the moment because I can track that here in my own dashboard, but it's an option if you want to. I'm going to go over to data collection. I'm going to turn on individual page views to store individual page views for the export so I can keep track of each page rather than all of them all together. And I'm going to delete these so that I can keep a list of all of the country codes so I can track where people are coming from. So just to run through the data collection component, I can check each individual page view. I can track the unique visitors for my website with what's called a session. Now, this is different than what Google Analytics might do because Google Analytics will track an individual person and whether they've come back to your website. But because we're not dealing with the privacy component, and we're providing more privacy to the viewers. Instead, this is referred to as sessions, so it tracks unique visitors for up to 8 hours. So if someone views the same website within 8 hours, then it will only count as one page view. You can also track where people are coming from with your website, so that'll show if they came from YouTube, if they came from Twitter, if they came from your newsletter, you'll be able to trace that. You'll be able to track the browsers that they came from. You'll be able to track the screen size, which basically just means is it from a phone or from a computer, and I'll be able to track the country and region. So that's the basic settings. Let's go over to manage page views. I don't need to make any changes at the moment here. Import export enables me to export a CSV of the file that has all of the page views. So this is interesting if you want to take a look at it in an Excel format, or if you want to import it to something like Obsidian so that you can use Dataview in order to query that CSV and then display the output. So this is just a good way for you to start accumulating data for yourself so you understand what people are interested in on your website. Now, what's interesting is you can also use an API. An API would allow for a lot more automatic distribution of your data. So perhaps you could create your own unique dashboard, not using the Goat Counter website. You could automatically use your website to reference Goat Counter without having it embedded so that you can just grab the data as you want. But honestly, that's a little more complicated than what I'm looking for, so I'm not going to get into that at the moment. Now let's go over to users. That's just me. And that's pretty much it. So again, if I go back here and I want to click through a couple different pages, these are all of my newsletters, which all have a podcast associated with them. And then I go back to my goat counter dashboard. It says it can take up to 10 seconds for it to be queried. There we go. I would say that took about 20 seconds. And now you can see that all of the different newsletters have appeared in the recent order that they reviewed. That's pretty great. And I can control this by however I want in terms of timeline. So if you're interested in what people have been most interested in for the last month, you can sort by month, quarter, half year, year. It's totally up to you, or you can input a custom time frame. You can also sort by day if you want to see how people have been going day by day. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So now if I wanted to, I can go back to settings, export, and in order to turn on exporting, I have to go to site settings, which it highlights here. Oh, I realized I didn't click save last time. So I'm going to click on individual page views, move that for the region, and then click save. There we go. So now if I go to import export, I can now see that there's an option for the pagination cursor. And what that means is that I can include the last time this was exported so that if I wanted to, rather than exporting all of my data all over again, I could start at the last time that I had exported the data. So let's click export. And there we go. I'm able to download it. Okay, so the file type that it downloaded was a .gz file. And in order for me to open that, I actually need to use what's called the unarchiver. And that worked to create the CSV file. Okay, and I can see here that actually the export says 0 rows, so it must not have indexed properly. So I'm going to wait a little bit and see if the next time I go to export it, it includes the most recent changes, because I believe it was too soon after I had made the clicks that it hasn't caught up properly. Now, I actually had an issue where it wouldn't let me export another copy for about a week. I kept having an error pop up saying that I could only download once per hour, which it says here. And that lasted for about a week before I was able to actually download it. But since then, I've had no problems. It's been almost 2 months since I set this up. So if I go back here, you can see that I've got quite a few hits. And if I expand this to a full year, I've had 700 hits to my main page, 200 to my smart and automatic folders, inboxing, and indexes tutorial. So you can kind of get a sense on how I'm able to see the value that each page is adding to my digital garden based on the number of people that tend to go to those links. So, what seems to be the most interesting to most people is the tutorials, which I'm not surprised because they're probably coming there from YouTube. And if I go down here, I can see, yes, in fact, most of the hits have come from YouTube. Now I would like to export this since I now have enough data for me to actually get a CSV file, an Excel file that's going to show me something interesting. And I've tried this once before and it worked. So let's start the export and I'm going to try and download the entire history. So I'm not going to add a pagination cursor. All right, this is now in progress. I'll check my email in a moment and we'll see what that looks like. And in the meantime, while I'm waiting for that to download, I just want to show you the documentation section. So the CSV file has a particular format to it, but you're able to go through and there's a ton of information in this documentation here that shows you how you can modify the data that you're getting, how you can, for example, import this into SQL to do proper analytics. So this CSV file that you're able to export from Goat Counter, that's kind of the beginning of what you're able to do with this data. Okay, so I just click download and I'm able to open the file here. You can see here that it has every instance of when a particular page was hit. So this is interesting and you might want to plot this data in different ways. You can see how people got to different pages. You can track the path that they took to get there. But to me, this is less interesting than what I'm able to see on the main dashboard, where I can see the specific number of people that have hit each page, and I can control the time frame that I'm looking at so that I can get an indication of the popularity of certain pages at a glance. So I hope that this shows you a bit of a better idea on how you can start using data on your website for free using Goat Counter to begin to understand what pages are getting the most hits. If I scroll down, I can see that I've had 3,915 visits in the last 2 months or so. So if you remember at the beginning, if you were using the free version in Verso, you can only have up to 2,500 events per month. So I'm already approaching that, and I've only had my website live for 2 months or so. So in my opinion, Goat Counter is a good alternative to Google Analytics and to the built-in Vercel web analytics because that turns into a paid one after 2,500 events per month. And it's far better than the $9 a month I would have to pay for Netlify. Then if we go back here, you can see that there's now a new pagination cursor. So if I wanted to, I could copy this number and add it to over here. And that would start the export of the data from that point, from when I clicked it today. That's just an easy way to begin accumulating your data and building on it over time rather than starting everything from scratch. And as you could see from the spreadsheet, the data is a little messy on its own. So if you want to use this in any way, you probably are going to want to apply some kind of analytics to it, perhaps within Excel itself or using some kind of SQL. But again, that's only if you want to go deeper into pulling out a lot more information about the data here. And the point of using Goat Counter, in my opinion, is to keep things as simple as possible. So I've personally only been using the dashboard on the front page. This is just a simplified version of adding analytics to your website that keeps track of the number of visitors to each page. If you want to get into more complexity, you can use other software like Google Analytics, but that requires a privacy policy, and for a lot of people, it's got way too much information. For me, this is perfect for gauging what I'm interested in learning more about my website, which is just which pages are people going to and how many people are going to each page. Just to go briefly over what happened here, I created a new account on Goat Counter, which gave me a snippet that I could inject into my Netlify site, which I did here. And after that, I had to disable the ad blocker on the Goat Counter website. And after that, everything was good to go. I can now go forward with exporting the files if I want to use an Excel sheet, a CSV file of that data in other purposes. Or if I'm so inclined, I can also go through and connect to the API. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. I think that this is a great way for you to be able to begin tracking data on your website, especially on a website like your digital garden, where it's interesting to see the paths that people follow as they move from node to node. And again, you can use Google Analytics to do this same type of system if you want. It's just that Google Analytics is a little more complicated. It can be kind of confusing and overwhelming for new users. And it also requires you to set up a privacy policy and cookies in order to be GDPR compliant. Personally, for what I'm looking for, I think that this Goat Counter is a much simpler and easier way to get started. And if I need to get into the complexity of Google Analytics, I can always add that in later. I can always do it on top of Goat Counter as well. Now, if you're interested in expanding on what we've done here, if you want to use the data that's exported from Goat Counter, in the next video, I'm going to show you how you can bring this into Obsidian using what's called the Dataview plugin, which I have a note on, that allows you to produce effectively an inbox within your digital garden, within your Obsidian, that could query the CSV file that came from your goat counter so that you could rank the notes in your digital garden by most page views. This is a cool way to use the embed function in Obsidian using the Dataview plugin to draw from data that you're getting from your website to then display on your website the most popular notes. If you're interested in learning how to publish your notes with Obsidian into your own digital garden in a free website, I have a tutorial on my website called How to Publish Obsidian Notes Website for Free. And there's also a YouTube video that goes step by step how I set this up using Netlify, Obsidian, and the Digital Garden plugin to take my notes from my Obsidian vault and publish them onto my website for free. In this tutorial video, I also go through and talk about how you can set up a custom domain so that you can build your personal brand or your business brand into your website to make it a little bit more recognizable for people. If you found this tutorial helpful on how to set up web analytics, I would love if you would please consider liking and subscribing as I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel, so your support really means a lot. Please consider also sharing this with one of your friends who might be interested in setting up their own website. Building a website has gotten a lot easier in recent years, and it's not nearly as daunting as it used to be. It took me about half an hour to set this up, and honestly, I've been having a lot of fun getting it going. I talk about this a little bit more in the philosophy of what a digital garden is. If you're interested in learning more about that, I have another video on it. If you're interested in staying up to date on what I've been doing with my digital garden, I recommend please subscribing to my newsletter here. You can go to my website and type in your email address, and you'll be automatically subscribed. My plan is to use the digital garden to help with my publishing so that I can reduce the friction with my posting and generally just publish more regularly so I can get my thoughts out there into the world, which is kind of the point of a digital garden. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.